What is good, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Gold Standard Podcast, part of the Niners Nation Podcast Network. I am Rob Stats Guerrero alongside Levin Black. What's up, Levin?
Not a whole lot. Excited to have somebody else to talk to this week.
If you are new to the show or if you've been with us for a while, you know how I usually do the intro. You get the hot takes from me and you get the cold truth from the human wet blanket, Levin Black. We have a special guest this week, Joe Staley, 49er great, now with NBC Sports Bay Area. We're so excited to do the interview. And yet I look over your shoulder, Levin, and there's a sign hanging up in your background that you just put there for this interview. Can you tell Joe what that sign says?
Yeah, you see that? Can you read that, Joe?
Yeah, I do see that. That is Nate Davis of Ball State, I believe, back in the day, made a hot appearance for the Niners back in the day. What was that, 2008 maybe? And It says he is greater than Dan Lefevre, who was my college quarterback at Central Michigan, which I hotly disagree with your cold take, hot take, whatever that is. More of a cold blanket for this start of this interview. So I appreciate that. What a warm welcome.
Yeah. So you know, I was at Ball State during the Nate Davis era and during your era at Central Michigan. So I kind of overlapped there. So that's what that sign's all about. I had to put something up being a Mac guy. So
I did not know that. So I appreciate the Mac connection. The Mac guys always have to stick together. I know that Dan Lefevre probably caused you a lot of heartache as a college student there. He was dominating the Mac back in that day.
I was actually just telling Rob that Dan Lefevre, until Case Keenum beat it, he had the all-time record for most touchdowns in NCAA history for his career.
I just saw him, actually. I was back at Central Michigan's Hall of Fame ceremony this October, and me and him went into the same time, and he's doing well. He's raising his family in Chicago and kind of transitioned from football, so just like we all are.
Thanks for just torpedoing things right off the start, Levin. Like, what are you doing? Come on, man.
He wouldn't understand. He's not a Mac guy.
He wouldn't understand the connection. I mean, there's a lot of pride from the Mac guys.
Yeah, you're in the shadow of the Big Ten, so it's kind of like you really got to take that pride with the Mac, because you got all those Big Ten schools that like to sit there and be like, well, who are you guys?
Let me guess, Rob, you went to a Power 5 conference?
No, I went to a school that got money specifically not to ever start a football team. So I went to Quinnipiac University in Connecticut, and they never had a football team. So the big thing there was they used to have shirts that said Quinnipiac football undefeated since 1929. That tells you, yeah.
That was the last time they actually filled the team in 1929.
No, I first. I think that's when they started getting money to not field a team. I don't know how the hell that even worked, but yeah. So that was my college experience in a nutshell.
What was the sport then? What was the sport? Were there any sports there, or was it like everybody got really, really dialed in for the people that were going to business school, and that was the championships, or the debate team? Was that a big sporting event? I don't know. That was there?
No, hockey. They're actually really good. They played for the national championships a few times recently. That's somehow they get people from Canada to come play hockey, and they're awesome.
Well, it sounds very close to Winnipeg, and Quebec is like a very familiar name for a lot of those Canadians. So
all right, first question here. I was so worried when we set this up that we were going to be talking about off season. We were going to be talking about plans for next year and Trey Lance and all this stuff, but thank God the 49ers pulled it out. I don't want to spend a ton of time on the Rams game, but first thing I saw, and I know you mentioned this on Twitter, have you ever seen an opposing head coach go into the end zone after a touchdown is scored and celebrate with his players?
I've seen it happen, but I've never seen it happen in the middle of the second quarter with 35 minutes left to play in the game, and you're up 17-0 against a team that you have yet to beat the last 5 times you've gone against. It was like they won the Super Bowl. I was beside myself watching. I'm like, what is he doing? Like, that's all that's going to do as a player, like a former player watching that. I don't know if they actually saw that and were aware of it. That was whatever emotion that the guys maybe didn't have starting that game, that for sure was going to light a match under their tails for the rest of the game, and it did. And I don't know if that was a rallying point for the team to be like, you can't have the coach of the opposing team in the end zone, celebrating with his players. Like he was, I'm trying to find an analogy to use here, but it was outlandish. And I'm not a big Sean McVay fan. I respect his coaching ability. I think he's a really bright mind. But it's more just his voice. So much his voice. And I think it all stems from when they were on Hard Knocks, and it was him and Anthony Lynn were the two coaches of the Chargers and the Rams at the time. And they went from Anthony Lynn just being like the salt of the earth, barbecuing in the background and, with his family, and like, hey, how do you like your ribs? And he's smoking a cigar. And it cuts immediately to Sean, and he's in the hills of LA, and he's like, you want some rosé, babe? I'm like, oh man, you lost your man card immediately. So
that's funny. I did want to ask you, since we're getting to the playoffs, how are you feeling this week? This is the first playoff game you're not a player for. So are you feeling like out of place, like wishing you were there, or are you good, or how are you feeling?
If this happened last year and you asked me that question last year, it would have had a completely different answer. But I am completely transitioned now to just a fan. And I love the Niners, obviously will always bleed red and gold. And my whole families are, diehard fans because of my time there. And then doing the job this year has really gotten me to kind of stay close to the team. But I don't have any feelings when it comes to wanting to be a player, wanting to be out in there on the field. I'm just like totally wrapped up in this season, much like you guys are, just watching and critiquing and getting excited when they do well and getting frustrated when they do poorly. So it's been a lot of fun for me this year to finally make that transition. Because last year was hard. I mean, you spend 13 years in the NFL and you are all of a sudden taken away from that. It's a little bit difficult, that transition to the opposite side.
When did you hit that point? At what point did it click for you that like, okay, I'm sort of past it now. I'm into this other sort of chapter.
I would say, just this year, really. It was just like that one season, watching the whole entire year last year. I just found myself on the couch interested, but not as a fan. It was more like, why did my neck have to hurt? Like, why did I have to retire? Like, I still felt like I could play football, and and it's kind of I don't know if it's a weird realization when you find out that football moves on. Football moves on. It doesn't stop for anybody. I don't care how your career was, how much time you spent there. Inevitably, Tom Brady is going to retire from the NFL. Maybe actually, that's probably not a good example, but he's going to, and the football machine is going to continue to move on. And that transition for me last year was hard. I think this year, just being, the second season away from that, was good. And then I had so much other stuff to kind of like just occupy my time. I think the first year with it being COVID year and being so difficult and everybody just being in the house, I think was also a challenge for me.
Now, the transition into talking about this team, one question I wanted to ask you, as somebody that's played under Kyle and with a lot of the players on this team, they've had some inconsistency offensively, especially in first halves. They've had a lot of slow starts. I was going to see what you think is causing them to have those slow starts.
Well, I think offensively, like the way that Kyle's system is based, and you can see it throughout the season, and it's not just the slow starts, but it's also when they're on a fast start. It's really built through their ability to get those first downs and to get into a rhythm. Kyle calls plays not just like, hey, this is going to be an explosive shot. It has to be set up, and it has to be set up not only on a drive, but in a quarter and then a half. Like, he doesn't go into a game and say like, these are 4 or 5 plays that I really like. It's like, these are 4 or 5 concepts that I really like. And we are going to run the hell out of these concepts. And then as the game goes on, we will build shot plays off of these concepts, but they have to be set up first. And I think that's one of the things about his offense since the time that he's been in the league. And I think he's, this year is really cool for me to watch because he's messing around now more with personnel packaging and formations than he is in the past. In the past, it was much more just strict concept based. Hey, I like this package out of 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and we're going to run the hell out of, stretch zone to the left because of the matchup. And then we're going to build our play action passes off of that. This year, it's much more like, all right, I like 21 personnel, but we're going to use actually Jeff Wilson as the fullback. So the defense is going to think that it's going to be, 11 or 21 personnel, but they don't know who the running back is. And then all of a sudden, maybe we'll do 11 personnel, but we're going to use Kittle as a fullback. And he's just like messing around with defensive advantages that he can get on the defensive side. And so I think all that stuff takes time in a game because he wants to, last game was a perfect example. They were out of rhythm the whole entire first half. And there was a lot of different things. It was, Jimmy's interception didn't help, obviously. And then they weren't that first series. They weren't able to convert on that third down and kind of get the chains moving, get into rhythm. And then they got behind it. They just weren't able to get the ball. They had three drives. They run like 15 plays until that final 2-minute drill at the end of the play.
Yep.
But Kyle was able to take what they were doing in that first half and said, all right, these are the packages that I like. This is the personnel grouping that I like. Now let me go at half and construct something to come out with in the second half. Like this is how they're handling when we go to 11, when we have Debo as a third receiver on the left, like all that stuff. And then he comes out and he's like, all right, this is how they want to play us. This is what we're going to do coming out. And then it's just about converting those third downs, staying on the field, first and second down, efficient runs. And then you can kind of get into the offense.
He wants positionless football, right? Like that is his ultimate goal, to be able to have Debo in the backfield. I think that was, they really were hoping that Jalen Hurd could contribute because they thought he could be a very versatile type player. Kittle's in the backfield sometimes. Like he just wants to be able to do everything with everybody so you have no idea what's coming.
100%. And he actually started kind of tinkering with that idea when he drafted Jalen Hurd. And it didn't pan out. That wasn't the pick and the player that he wanted, but that was the first vision with him because of his ability as a running back. And he was always kind of looking for those guys that he can put in a lot of different situations. And even if you look at Jerick McKinnon, when he brought him in, that was the big draw for Kyle to bring him into the offseason and kind of, paid him a little bit too much, was because he was looking to use him not just as a running back, but his ability as a pass catcher and to run those choice routes in the slot was something that Kyle has always, wanted to have in his team. And then he found the perfect player to fill that role in Debo. And I think it's been a process for Debo. His rookie year, you saw the talent that he had, but it was just like how Brandon kind of went through it this beginning of this year. Brandon Ayuk. It takes a while for guys coming out of college, especially when they're as talented as those two guys are, to understand the discipline, the work ethic, the consistency that you have to have every single day to become, your full potential in the NFL. And, Debo had that injury his second year that kind of put him behind his development. And then now this third year, it's just like Kyle's got Debo in the right frame of mind, mentally, physically, and then he can just kind of unleash of what he's wanted to do for the last 3-4 years.
Now, speaking of Debo, there's a lot of talk that the Niners need to sign him. So let me ask you, as somebody that's now in the media, would you give him a contract that makes him the highest paid wide receiver in the league? Or would you try to maybe say, hey, no, you're a running back?
I would give him a contract 100%, but yeah, I think you for sure, if you're the Niners and you have the leverage of trying to give someone a contract, you try to use that leverage to save as much money as you can, that's for the agents and the GM and Prague and all those guys in the front office to kind of figure out and come to an agreement. But I don't think there's any issues as far as, do you keep Debo? He is an integral part of this offense and what Kyle wants to do forward, just because of the evolution of Kyle as a play caller, because of it, and the versatility that he has with Debo. And I've heard it been said, and I really agree with it a lot this season, is that when you have someone on your team that every other every other team in the NFL is trying to go out and find the next version of that guy. You do everything you can to keep that guy on your team. I mean, you look at Aaron Donald in the LA Rams, like you pay him whatever you want, whatever he wants, because every single team is trying to find an Aaron Donald. Every single team now is going to try to find a Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. Like these guys that you have on your team, you do everything you can to keep them on your team for the long term.
You mentioned Kyle there. There's so many things I want to pick your brain on him because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that has kind of come up this year, especially when they were struggling. I've come up with some stuff. Who knows? It could be totally wrong, which is why I want to ask you about it. And if it is, please tell me. When Jimmy turns the ball over, I feel like Kyle puckers up a little bit. Like he gets nervous, and you look at his play calls and he'll go right back to the run game. Like when Jimmy turns it over, I feel like that's when Kyle gets super conservative. Do you agree with that?
I have to go back and look at the exact drives after turnovers and stuff. My first impression is no, I don't think he does, as far as get conservative with his play calling, where he's forcing it to be like, all right, I'm not going to let Jimmy kind of, turn the ball over and ruin this game for us. So we're just having to run the ball. But I think anytime you get into a turnover situation, and I think what Jimmy's done such a tremendous job of this year is, yes, he does have turnovers, and that's the one knock on him throughout his whole entire time here. And I think he does get, we can go into that too. I think he gets a very bad rap, and I'm not a homer. I played with Jimmy, but I'm not trying to be a homer. I think he gets a bad rap with a lot of the stuff that he does in this offense because of how great Kyle is as a play caller. Everybody kind of just assumes that, well, it's all Kyle and it's nothing is of Jimmy. When I think it's a perfect marriage between quarterback and coordinator and head coach. But back to your original question, I know that Kyle is extremely hard on Jimmy, and he has he has a ton of confidence in Jimmy to operate the offense now. And I think he gets probably more frustrated with him, as any coordinator gets more frustrated with a quarterback when you have an interception. I've been on the sidelines when he's covering up his play calling sheet. He's in Jimmy's ear, and he's basically saying, why the hell did you throw that pass right there? Or what the hell were you seeing? But I think what I've been so impressed with Jimmy this year is, regardless of how the game's going, and if he's throwing an interception or if he's not throwing an interception, or if he's playing really well, if he's not playing really well, his ability to flush that and move on, I think it would be interesting study to go back and see how he performs that drive immediately after an interception, because that's something that I've always been impressed with when he was there, was kind of his ability to just kind of play in the moment. And I think he's done that to the next level this season. Last week's game was a perfect example. Everything was on the line, and he had to basically put that game on his shoulders. And he had that bad interception in the second half to Jalen Ramsey that kind of took some points off the board. And you get in a situation where you're 120 on the clock left with no timeouts, and everybody knows you're going to pass. And there was a lot of, we talk about that Deebo pass that he had, that 45-yarder that kind of got, jump started him and got him in field in position. But that was a lot of Jimmy. He manipulated Jalen Ramsey there, looked to the flat, was able to get him open, and then threw it with enough velocity and enough touch to put it on Deebo. So his ability to run after the catch was there. But yeah, I kind of got sidetracked there with your original question, but
no, it's all right.
I don't really feel like it is, because I think Kyle has a lot of confidence right now in Jimmy to rebound off of turnovers. So I don't think it ever really weighs into his thinking.
Now, I actually have a theory on Jimmy, and I want your thoughts on it. I feel like when he has time to think, when it's not like a critical situation where we have to score here or we're probably going to lose, he kind of almost plays it safe. I don't want to say he's scared to throw the deep ball, but I think if to me, it seems like he hesitates unless it's completely wide open because he has another opportunity. Whereas in 2017, when, he's coming in, he's trying to earn it, seemed like he didn't really hesitate on anything. He was just out there slinging it. And you kind of see that, especially like this last week when his back is against the wall, he just starts slinging it. He doesn't hesitate anymore. And it seems like he plays more freely. And when he does that, that's when he's great. And that's when he hits that high ceiling that everybody sees. Do you kind of agree with that, where his back is against the wall, he kind of forgets about the possibility of the downside of making the throw?
I think the Chicago Bears game was a huge turning point, not just for him, but the team. But I think it was because Jimmy kind of said, I don't want to swear on here, but he said, F it. He was like sick of having to look over his shoulder with a new situation. He was putting too much time thinking about that. Probably it was weighing on him. If I throw this pass, if I'm, too aggressive, if I take a shot, am I going to get pulled? And he just it looked to me, this is all just my own opinion. It looked to me that he kind of just said, F it. And I am just going to play as I can play and be as aggressive and not care and worry about if I'm getting pulled or yanked or if the young kid's going to take my job. And I think from that point on, I think he has been more aggressive. I think he's at his best when he has quick reads. He's really good, I think, at reading defenses and knowing and understanding where to go with the ball and where the dead zone is. And one thing that is not highlighted enough too, when people talk about it as being a trait of his, is like the way he throws the ball, everything is an upper body torque. He just kind of like unloads it and it's a super quick release. If you go back, and there's like 7 or 8 throws, and this is the game yesterday, or not yesterday, the last game on Sunday, where if he has guys breathing down his neck, he is not in a position to throw the ball at all from a traditional standard.
Right.
But he's able to just kind of like flick the ball with his wrist and understand, like, all right, this is the coverage, this is the dead zone, this is where I have to lead this guy. He's going to break. He has a lot of trust, and I think in his receivers right now. And I think that is one of the things that people kind of overlook is, he's a lot of short passes, everything's kind of across the middle, but you put a quarterback that has a traditional stance and has to get set up and his back foot and everything and a little bit longer of a motion, like those are sacks. Those are sacks, those are negative plays. And everybody kind of focuses on the negative always with Jimmy and doesn't highlight a lot of the things that he's done really, really well this year.
I have crushed Jimmy Garoppolo. People call me a Jimmy hater. I've been so frustrated with him. My biggest issue is that I feel like his mistakes are the same mistakes. I don't know what it is. I always feel like whether it's like the underneath defender or he just seems like the mistakes he makes, he throws interceptions to the same guy that he just never seems to see. Is that accurate? Is he a mistake repeater, or am I just, too emotional about the whole thing?
I think everybody, in our, like where we're at right now, we're watching every single game, every single throw, every single snap with a very critical eye. And if it's a good 5-yard out, that's, right on the money with good timing, your brain isn't memorized. You're not going to remember that, but when it's a third quarter interception to Bobby Wagner over the middle of the field because he doesn't see, him dropping back into coverage, that's just really frustrating as a fan. And I think that's why we always focus on that. It's just human nature. But my whole point on that, and with Jimmy, is like, yes, the narrative around him has always been turnovers. You can't let him lose the game and all this. And I think it comes from everybody's respect for Kyle and his X's and O's and the way that he builds his offensive game plan, where everybody kind of looks at it and says like, all right, Jimmy just has to get out of the way and not turn the ball over, and then we're going to be good. A lot of the reason why I think Kyle's offense is able to run the way it is because of Jimmy as well. Those short passes across the middle, those play action stuff, the ability to throw out of very tight windows when you have a pressure, breathing down your neck. to manipulate defense, to understand coverages and where to go, is a lot of quarterback play. And it's not highlighted because it's not sexy. It's not a 50-yard bomb down the field, and it's not a rolling to your left and throwing to your right, no look passes like Mahomes. It's not sexy to talk about, and so you don't think about it. But I think Jimmy's pretty underappreciated overall by the fan base because of the X's and O's and everything that they do creatively. But I mean, just to another point, like for those guys, like those receivers, everybody talks about how they're the best yards after catch, and a lot of the yards come after the catch. Well, to get those yards after catch, yes, it's scheme, but it's also Jimmy understanding exactly when to get them the ball, how to manipulate a defense so they kind of maybe misstep one time, and to put it on them in a full sprint running so they don't have to slow down. And they don't, there's play there that I understand is like, well, any quarterback should be able to do that, but I've seen it when it's not that, and I've been a part of it when it's not that. And it's really frustrating.
You've seen some stuff, Joe.
I've seen some stuff. I can say that.
So let me ask, because you said a few questions ago that Jimmy and Kyle are like perfect together, perfect pairing. So would that mean to you stick with Jimmy next year and you have maybe Trey sit a second year? Or I got to ask, since you said they're a perfect pairing.
I think they are a perfect pairing because of, I think they're a perfect pairing, and I think it's more, Kyle and Jimmy. I think it's more for Jimmy. It really fits, obviously, his skill set and like what he's asked to do. If you put Jimmy in a lot of different offenses across the league, I don't think he's nearly as successful. But I say that too, not saying like Kyle's the one that's propping him up. I think there's quarterbacks that you take out of the system they're currently in and put him in Shanahan's system. I don't think they're nearly as good. So it's from that perspective, for me, it's a good pairing for both of them. But that being said, you give up 3 first-round picks and you have a quarterback that I think everybody's excited about. I'm very excited about Trey. I think next year is going to be Trey Lance time. I think he took his year to kind of understand the NFL game, be an understudy of Jimmy. And I think Jimmy's done a tremendous job of, being open and honest with him and helping him along, not being like scared of all that stuff. From everything I've heard and talking to Trey, Jimmy's been a real great sideboard for him to run ideas off. But now he fully understands Kyle's system much more than he would obviously in the beginning. And so I think just this last game you saw against the Texans, the ability to throw it deep outside the numbers, I do think is going to add an even more exciting element for the offense, not just for the sexy throws outside the numbers, but now the safety is not going to be able to cheat into the box all the time. And you're going to have to play maybe more traditional kind of softer coverage to protect those things on the outside. And then also just contractually, you have a rookie quarterback and you have Deebo Samuel coming up, Nick Bosa coming up. You have guys that you have to pay. There's a lot of advantages for going to a rookie quarterback on a not a rookie quarterback, but a quarterback on his rookie contract.
Right.
You said that Kyle is hard on quarterbacks. I've heard the same thing. I used to work with Chris Sims. He tells me that Kyle praises him publicly and hammers him privately. Mm-hmm. What can you give us maybe an example of that? And also, like, how do you think that that's going to be for a young quarterback having to deal with a coach who's tough on quarterbacks?
Well, I'll say what you just said, and it's not exclusive to quarterbacks. He praises everybody publicly, and he's incredibly hard on everybody privately. I've been in some of those meetings where I thought, I was in great standing with Kyle, and we're close buddies, and we have a personal relationship outside of the game of football. And just sitting in those meetings in the team room and just getting ripped like this. You think that this is what the effort that you're going to give on the field right here? Like, look at your step right here. Who coaches you to do that? Like he keeps everybody accountable, which is awesome. I mean, I would much rather have that than the exact opposite. I've been a part of the exact opposite.
Slightly different than Jim Tom Sula.
I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics, but there's definitely coaches that I played for, whether it be head coaches, offensive coordinators, offensive line coaches that when you do great, everything's like, oh yeah, look at this block. But when you don't do great, no one's being held accountable. It's kind of just like, well, I don't want to say anything, or it's not conducive to being in a team that's going to really go anywhere. You have to have criticism. You have to have coaches that are very honest with you. And I think that's one of the things that the Niners have done such a great job of over the years, is bringing in guys that are not sensitive. They can take coaching. They can understand how important that is to their development, not only individually, but also, to a team.
Now, to get back to kind of the quarterback situation, I actually want to throw it back to when there was a similar situation on the team that you were part of back in 2012. I have two questions here. One is just a personal thing I've always wondered. When did Harbaugh let the team know that he was sticking with Cap and Alex wasn't going to get his job back? And two, when it's a quarterback situation like that, where there's two viable options, is that something that's talked about in the locker room, or is it kind of like a politics situation where it's only going to cause division, so it's never brought up? It's kind of taboo.
The first question, I think he brought it up after the Bears game. Obviously, Alex wasn't going to play that, so we knew that Cap was going to start there. And then he did really well. And then he brought it up, I think, the next week before we got on the practice field. I had heard it. I think he was going to address it when we had our first team meeting. I forget the specifics on it, but I had heard it before. I'm not sure if it was from Cap, Kyle, or not Kyle, but Cap, Alex, or someone else. And I was actually pretty upset, not because Cap was starting, but because of someone losing. I just have a belief system that, like, you shouldn't lose your job to an injury. I know it's I'd probably think exactly different if I was an actual coach, because you're going to play the best players out there. But I was pretty upset about how it went down. It was a concussion. He had no kind of control over. He was playing really well until then. It's one game. Why is he losing his job? I'm like, am I going to lose my job all of a sudden because a guy comes in as a backup and plays really good for one game? So I was a little upset. We had some conversations about that. But on the flip side, to answer your second question, there's no division because guys just want to win in the locker room, and if you are out there performing. Now, if Cap went out there the second week and stunk it up, and then the third week and stunk it up, and they were still saying like, hey, he's going to be our guy, then I think you would have seen some division. But, when we flipped to Colin, it was like, yeah, wow, this really does open up our offense. There's such a different dynamic here to our offense and our offensive game plan than there was, with Alex. And that's no slight on Alex. We were still very, very close, still continue to be close, but guys in the locker room want to win. And I don't think, maybe we do, maybe we don't, but I think, Colin that season, especially with the offense we were running, had a huge hand in us going to the Super Bowl that year.
You kicked the hell out of the Bears in his first start. I still go back and watch that on YouTube sometimes.
It was unbelievable. I mean, and also too, it was one of those times, and Alex, I don't want to say anything. Alex is a close friend. Love Alex. But I remember one route they ran in the game where Colin threw a corner route, I believe, to Kyle Williams. And it was like such a touch pass, right on the money, full stride, down the field. And I was like, wow, we threw the ball down the field. Holy cow. And then we started to add, a lot of the stuff with the running game and the, zone reads and all that stuff. And then it just fit my personal game so much more, and it wasn't the greatest pass blocker, but I could sure as hell run block the hell out of someone. And, I was excited about the opportunity to run the ball a little bit more as offensive lineman, and then also have a quarterback back there that ran a 4.4. And if I got beat, he could kind of just get out of it. So.
Let's bring it to the Dallas games. We do actually have a playoff game to talk about this week. when I look at Dallas's defense, the biggest person that jumps out to me is obviously Micah Parsons. He's a freaking monster, basically. What would be your sort of game plan against him?
Well, I think they use him in very interesting ways. I think Dan Quinn has done a great job of doing different schemes that kind of take advantage of his skill set. And what I mean by that is, when he plays off the ball linebacker, he's a will linebacker, and he's a rookie, and he probably gets crossed up a little bit with a lot of the motions and sifts in the backfield. So basically they give him, instead of having to read all that, they put that on Van Der Esch's plate, and then they just say, hey, Micah, you're going to shoot a gap, right? And the way they kind of set up their defense, a lot of times he's one-on-one with a guard, in the middle. And they run a lot of single dogs and single blitzes to take advantage of his pass rushing ability. But then also what they do, and what I think is really going to be one of the keys of the game, is they'll bring him down and play the edge in their base defense, and they will create what we call the bear front. So it's basically just 4 defensive linemen, and then a linebacker on the line of scrimmage, five on the line of scrimmage. Everybody's covered up. And so what that does is not only put Micah Parsons on the edge, who's one of the best edge rushers I've seen in his ability to rush the passer, but it also puts Lawrence over a guard one-on-one. And sometimes it will put Gregory one-on-one over a guard. And those two guys have a different skill set than guards typically see. And so for Lawrence to come back and be paired with Micah Parsons, I think that's the matchup. Not necessarily Micah, because I think as great as he is, he hasn't seen a left tackle like Trent Williams. And I know a lot of times he's going to be on the right-handed side, but he also hasn't seen a run blocker, I don't think, like the tackles on both sides present. And I do think that they can have some success in making it a physical game, because when he's on the edge, he's still a linebacker. He's not going to be able to hold up against this really physical 49ers offensive line. But the matchups to watch for me are the guys interiorly when they get that. And then his ability as an edge rusher, I think, is really special. I saw some stat that he's like, as far as pass rushing stats or pass rushing reps, he's like 120th in the league. And he has generated almost 13, 14 sacks this year. He's the number one as far as pressure rate goes from their PFF scale. So he's doing so much with such little opportunity. And I think that is going to be, he's going to play on that right side against Tom Compton when he wants to rush the passer in their nickel situations. That's going to be a matchup to watch. And then also Dan Brunskill versus Lawrence when he kind of tightens into a 3 technique. I know they had a great game plan last week against Aaron Donald to slow him down, but that was because Tom Compton and both McKivitz, who I was actually really impressed with, by the way, they did a great job on Von Miller and Leonard Floyd, and they won their one-on-one matchups. If Micah Parsons is able to win that one-on-one against Tom, then you're going to see a little bit of a different scheme up front and a different kind of game plan, and that is where the game could kind of get hairy for me a little bit.
Now, the actual other side of the ball, trench warfare, that's the one I'm more excited to see. Like that Cowboys offensive line, it's you could call it an historic offensive line. It probably has multiple Hall of Famers on it. It's been around a long time, dominated the league. But then you have the Niners defensive line. The Niners, as that defensive line goes, the defense goes. They got to generate pressure with only 4, maybe occasionally a 5th rusher. Do you think that matchup is kind of one for the ages, and how that matchup goes, the game will go?
That is a great point that you brought up, because I do think that is, you look at how the 49ers defense has been able to kind of turn around the tide in the last second half of the year, and it's been through the resurgence of the 49ers D-line. Their depth, I think they're getting a lot of production from a lot of different guys. Moving Eric Armstead into a 3 technique has been huge for this team. And then also the emergence of Arden Key as that inside pass rusher in nickel situations has been huge. And that's allowed them to kind of cover up some of the issues they had on the back end of the secondary for the second half of the year with the injuries and whatnot. But that being said, to your point, the Dallas's offensive line is just as talented. Zach Martin, for as good as Trent Williams is as a tackle, Zach Martin is just as good as a guard in the NFL, and he has been consistently throughout his whole entire career. And then Tyron Smith on the other side. The one thing that I do think is going to give the Dallas offensive line fits is the penetration from DJ Jones and Eric Armstead in the middle, especially on first and second down. If they're able to penetrate in first and second down and slow up the run game of the Dallas Cowboys and try to make them one-dimensional, I think the Niners will have success. Because if you look at the Dallas's run game, how they want to kind of construct it with Zeke, a lot of it is just what we call like power no puller. They'll do double teams up front, and they'll kind of like let Zeke kind of be patient because he doesn't have the speed to get to the edge anymore. And so if they're able to penetrate and kind of cause havoc in the run game through the interior too, that allows their linebackers to be more aggressive. It allows them to kind of get, maybe have to cut back a step earlier. That's the matchup I'm interested to see. And then I'm also interested to see, Tony Pollard, how healthy he's going to be coming into the game, because he's their speed guy.
Right.
And he gives the juice to the edge that Zeke maybe doesn't have anymore. And I think if he's able to get rolling, then it comes down to Nick Bosa, who's been solid against the run all season. And then, who are they going to play on the other side? Ebukam, Key, the rotation that they have there, to really set the edge and try to keep them inside the tackle box.
There is no way in hell that Zeke is going to beat Fred and Aziz to the edge. Like, it's just not happening. The 49ers linebackers are way too fast for that.
Yeah, Greenlaw was a little bit too fast this last game, his first game back. He was
insane.
Around. Yeah. My wife watched the game, and she even said, she goes, "Who is 57?" He was a little bit out of control in that game.
Yeah, he could have got a couple of flags. He hit Stafford once. Yeah,
he's excited.
I mean, when they're all there, I think DeMeco Ryans deserves a ton of credit for how he's sort of evolved things since week one. But just some of the guys that they have on this defense, they're flying all over the place. They are one of the fastest teams in the league.
I think he deserves a ton of credit. And what's exciting is that he had to do it with kind of a reshuffled deck. It wasn't just the same defensive front that he rolled out in week one, and it evolved, and he was able to kind of tinker with different schemes. He had to kind of piece together a lot of pieces because of injuries. And I think that is what is exciting too about the defense is they have really hit their stride as far as schematics go, defensive line, their depth they have there. They're able to kind of take over a game up front. And then, like, to your point, I don't think they've been healthier, since probably week one, and it's hitting at the right time. All three linebackers should be back healthy. The whole secondary should be back and healthy. I think they really hit, looks to be, I don't want to say a home run, but I think they have to be really excited about the way Ambry Thomas has developed over the last 4 weeks of the season. And then Emmanuel Mosley coming back, looking really good, his first game back from his injury. It's just really exciting. I think as much attention as a Kyle Shanahan offense gets for the reason for success, I think that the Niners defense has been one of the top defenses, especially in the second half of this season, and their ability to consistently dominate opposing teams' run game has been a big reason for it.
Now, on the other side, the Cowboys have Diggs in that secondary. He had a bunch of interceptions this year, but he also gave up a lot of yards. He was kind of an all or nothing. He always plays for that turnover. Yep. So I was curious, who do you think Kyle will want to attack him with? Do you think he's going to want to try to get a matchup with Ayuk or a matchup with Debo, maybe Kittle? Who do you think Kyle would rather be going after him?
See, this is the stuff, like, you start talking about coverages and you start talking about going downfield and route trees. I'm like, I know what a 7 route is. I can talk about a hitch. Let me see a deep over. I don't exactly know about matchups and formations but I think if you're looking at it specifically as a matchup and who you probably want, I think you have to go with Debo, I think, just because you can make it a physical game, and I think Trayvon Diggs is one of those guys that, like you said, he goes for the big plays. He can get kind of burned with a little bit of, the stutter moves, the deep, the physical receivers that can kind of get into his body and get away with a little push off here or there, the little nuances of playing the position. I think, that's an exciting matchup to watch, but I don't know how often that's going to be the case because, Debo likes to play more in the slot, closer to the line of scrimmage, and Trayvon Diggs is more of an outside guy. I think one thing, though, talking about the pass catchers for the Niners that they have to be super excited about too, is just the development of that team as a whole. You kind of go back to 2019 and the Super Bowl run that we had that year. The big difference for me and why I'm really excited about the Niners in the playoffs is they have so much talent as a passing offense. The utilization of Debo, everything that you can use with him. Brandon Ayuk, I think, has been an absolute weapon the second half of the year. And it's not just because he's getting schemed open. He is running incredible routes. He's playing with a ton of confidence. And then last week's game, Juwan Jennings, what a cool story for him as a 7th round pick without a ton of talent, or not a ton of talent, not a lot of talent that guy has, without a lot of opportunity, as a 7th round pick and the development that he's had. And I had spoken about this in the post-game show, but I was having a very casual conversation with Jimmy. We weren't even talking about football. And he brought up out of the blue about how impressed he was with Juwan and everything that he's done, not only on the practice field in the meeting room. He's been huge for our team this year. And maybe this is an opportunity for you to talk about him more because he's really incredible to what he's bringing on the field. The urgency that he has just in the run game. And that's super important to this offense, having receivers that understand the importance of blocking the secondary and digging out those safeties. And for him to have the opportunity to have a game like he did last week, I think was really cool for him to be rewarded for all the hard work he put in.
You mentioned
George Kittle. And by the way, we have one of the best tight ends to ever play the game of football. So, I think that's it's a very deep room.
You mentioned the ground game. I want to bring this up because I know Mike McDaniel is responsible for a lot of that. He's being interviewed by the Dolphins this week, I believe, or will be in the near future. How important is Mike McDaniel to this whole offense? And can you kind of tell people sort of what his role is?
He's incredibly important. He's the Wizard of Oz for the run game. He is, and not just run the game, for the offense. His genius comes into the, construction of a lot of the plays and the utilizing different people's skill sets in different situations. And he will come up with some just crazy concepts, and he locks himself in his office and you go in there and he's got 17 whiteboards that are all scrabbles all over the place. He's got 19 different call sheets. It's an absolute mess. He's got 17, cases of Red Bull that are empty next to him on his desk, and he's just coming up with a bunch of different concepts and then building them, and then building them up. And he has been, by Kyle's side since they really started this whole journey together. And I think, he doesn't get enough credit for his input is really trusted from Kyle, and his input and his ability to craft a lot of the plays is something that doesn't get enough attention. Kyle is an unbelievable play caller, and he knows how to piece. It's like you get 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and he can piece everything together really, really quickly and understand the overall concept. Whereas Mike McDaniel is the one that's back there making the picture. He's the artist that's constructing this jigsaw puzzle and then gives it to Kyle and says, "You're welcome." And then Kyle just kind of puts it all together with the passing game coordinator. It was Mike LaFleur before. Now it's Bobby Slowick. And that brain trust just works really, really well together. And I mean, it's not downplaying Kyle's ability, obviously, to construct plays, because he definitely does that as well. But Kyle is the master play caller that holds the key to everything. But McDaniels is the guy that really, really understands and can dial in a run game.
All right. So we're talking coaching. I would never forgive myself if I didn't ask you this while we got you here. There's a lot of rumors Jim Harbaugh could be coming back to the NFL.
Yeah.
If he does take an NFL job and your phone rings with a coaching offer on his staff, would you answer it?
No, because I don't want to get into coaching, I don't think. Yeah, and no. And then also just I have a lot of respect for Harbaugh. I loved our time together.
He's a psycho, Joe. He's crazy.
He's an interesting character. I don't think I think psycho might be a little bit of a harsh word to use for human being there, but he's an interesting guy. I also think that working on his staff would be a study in itself of just dealing with a personality that is very, very unique. It would be nonstop entertainment. I could tell you that.
That's what my wife misses. She tells me every year that she misses having Harbaugh on the sideline. She told me just now, because she saw a headline, like she told me this morning, if Harbaugh gets in the NFL, we have to watch their game every week because I want to see him on the sidelines.
If he gets in the NFL, maybe I can send him a text and be like, hey, we got to come up with some more sayings. You can't just run, who's got it better than us every single year with every single team you play with. I think that's maybe a little bit why he's tailor-made for the college game, because that cycle is about 3 years, and those kids, they hear the same message for 3 years, and then they're like, all right, I'm out of here. And I heard that message every single year, and it was like year 4, year 5, it was like, I mean, we can have a new saying for a year. We don't have to always say who's got it better than us.
Well, you still have those. Don't you still have those, like
blue shirts?
The blue shirts, yeah.
I saw it. I saw the Michigan players wearing it heading to the national championship game.
Wow.
I was like, I thought we were the only blue collar football team. I guess there's a lot of blue collar football teams that are out there.
One last question I always wanted to ask you. It's not really related to anything we were talking about, but it was a comment you made earlier this year that became like a big deal. And that was how you said that you called DeForest Buckner and you were like, hey man, you got to take the torch now. You're going to be the leader. And then you found out Buckner was going to be traded. The thing I wanted to ask you is, who did you call after that? Who was your second choice on that list to lead the team after Buckner?
I didn't call anybody. I said, it's either DeForest Buckner or no one. And no, I'm joking. I'm being sarcastic. It wasn't like I called anybody. It wasn't literal. Like, it wasn't like I got to seek out DeForest Buckner because he's my choice to lead the football team after I leave. I never even really looked at it like that. It was just, he was a leader on the team, and I was like, hey, I'm going to retire, and, let's have a conversation about, you're the guy, you're going to be the guy, not now. He was already the leader of the team. But it was more so that. And then, but there's other guys that I talked to, during that whole process. I talked to Kittle, obviously he was really close to McGlinchey, talked with Lakin and Raheem, everybody through that whole entire process. I kind of like let them know, but DeForest was one of the first guys, if not the first guy, that I kind of sought out to let him know, just because I had so much respect for him as a player and how much he meant to the team, not just on the field, but his leadership.
All right. I got one last question for you. You were a tight end your freshman year of college, and then you transitioned into an offensive tackle. George Kittle is a tight end who can block like an offensive tackle. Have you ever found yourself looking at him going, if I stuck with tight end, I could have been him?
No, because his physique's a little bit different. I think he's a little bit more chiseled like a Greek god, rather than chiseled like the Stay Puft character from Ghostbusters. It's not a surprise to me, though, the way that he's able to block. I saw his rookie year when he was a little pipsqueak coming out of Iowa. He has a great work ethic. He's obviously a very talented player, but from the day that he was there, he was out on the practice field, hitting a blocking sled. He's not running routes. He's not working on his release. He's not working on the stuff that, you would think a skill position player would be working on all the time, because that's what's going to get him noticed. That's what's going to get him paid. No, he knew that, hey, I'm not the great run blocker, and if I want to be, the player that I want to be in this league, I'm going to put in work, diligent work every single day to get better at it. And I saw a huge jump in his ability from his rookie year to his second year as a run blocker. And it's that work ethic has never gone away. He still works on everything that he can do better and improve in his game. And I think what's cool too is that he is now taking that not just on the field, but he's taking it also off the field, doing things that can bring the locker room closer together and having conversations with guys that maybe he normally wouldn't be talking to, and making sure that the team is together. And in adversity, those are the guys that you kind of lean on, guys that have the whole entire pulse of the locker room. And I can go on about George. He got my respect forever, man. He's a hell of a player, but I think the reason why he's a hell of a player is because of his work ethic.
Well, first of all, you just made a Ghostbusters reference, and I'm super excited about that, because I just heard Kyle say that guys on the team don't know about the 49ers Cowboys rivalry. And first of all, it made me feel super.
They probably weren't even born.
Yeah.
Come on. How do you not know? It's Niners Cowboys in the 90s. Like, the last time the Niners and Cowboys played was the championship game in 1994. There were 10 Hall of Famers on the field for that game. Like, how do these guys not know about this?
I'm going to tell you something. I saw this kind of shift as my career went on, and I don't know what it is, if there's an exact reason behind it, but as I got older, and the kids got younger, the history of the sport is kind of lost. And it's not a 49ers thing. It's everybody, it's across the league. I think there's so much more stuff to occupy kids' attention now, that a lot of them kind of play the sport and then they don't go home and digest the sport, which is unfortunate, because as I grew up, and I'm sure you guys did as well, sports was everything. I played the sport. I'd go home and I had the baseball cards, the football cards, and I'm looking at stats. And if I'm allowed to watch TV that day, I'm putting on sports. I have John Madden football. I'm everything is just sports. And so I think that is unfortunate. And that's not saying everybody's like that, but you'd be shocked to hear how many guys that I would be talking to, rookie, second year player, about, hey, did you watch Jonathan Ogden as an offensive lineman? And they're like, who the hell is Jonathan Ogden? I'm like, he's probably one of the greatest offensive linemen that ever played the game of football. I'm like, have you heard of Larry Allen? And they're like, no. I'm like, do you know who Boomer Esiason is? Just like a quarterback even. And they're like, no. Is he a kicker? Like, they don't, and it's just anybody. Because I think there's a lot of different things out there to occupy people's attention.
Yeah, we're actually talked off air before we came on. We're all the same age, the three of us. We're all within like 1 year of each other, I think. And one thing that I think you didn't mention that's missing from when we were kids is NFL films. I used to watch those, and the poetic
Saturday, they would
the poetic writing, those songs, like that really helped get that history ingrained. Like a lot of what I know of football from back in the day before I watched, the 50s, 60s, 70s, I knew all that stuff because of NFL films.
100%. I remember watching even as young as like 5, 6, 7. I remember just being like, and it was like, it wasn't on-demand TV. It was like, you had to get excited and seek it out. You had to watch when we were young kids. And I remember watching Football Follies, like those old football videos. And
in the off season, that was always on.
My mom worked at a library. She was a librarian for the first 12 years of my life. And one of the perks was, at the time, you could go there and you can rent VHS tapes. And I remember going there and just having like an endless catalog for free of just, I think everybody could get it for free because there's a library, but but I just remember like I spent a lot of time in the library because my mom would use it as a babysitter for me. And reading about football and reading about baseball and like just all sports. And then whatever season was going on, seeking out those VHS tapes and like watching Football Follies and this the NFL films and all that stuff. And that's a reason why, at least I like fell in love with sports. It was because of those reasons.
And you got Facenda's pipes too, and that didn't hurt. The autumn wind is a pirate. Everybody knows that.
I don't have anything. I'm trying to think of something right now.
I have actually tried to get my wife to understand those because like I play those songs. Those songs have been my ringtones for years. She hates those songs because of that. And I've tried to like go on YouTube and show her like, look at this. It's literally poetry written into football. And yeah, it's just hard without actually like sitting there and watching the whole show. I wish that those NFL films were more accessible.
You got to bring them back. We should do it for the Niners.
Here's the thing, Joe.
New Joe show. There you go.
Yeah, we don't exactly have the pull to make that happen. I think that's probably your area.
No, we can do it. Let's all get together. We'll talk off air. We'll get some poetry going. We'll have we'll have a poetry slam session.
There you go. Well, Joe,
poetry in motion.
Oh, that clip is going to live forever. Thank you so much for the time, Joe. We really appreciate it. Again, you can see him NBC Sports Bay Area. And after the game, you, Dante, and everybody are fantastic. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a lot of fun. And again, Nate Davis, not better than Daniel Fever. So shout out to my boy Dan, out there doing medical device sales in Chicago. I know you're listening, tuning in, and I still love you.
Thanks, Joe.
See you guys.